Missing in action. As I shut Colin's front door, I noticed Jack Blackwell standing on his doorstep, arms folded, a small crowd of locals around him, their shadows intersecting on the cobbled street. They kept glancing towards Colin's house, and when they saw me come out, they all shuffled off, except Jack himself, who gave me a grim stare before going inside and slamming his door. I felt a shiver go up my spine, as if a goose had stepped on my grave, as my dear mother used to say, bless her soul, and when I got home, I couldn't concentrate on my book one little bit. By the following morning, when Johnny had been missing over 36 hours, the mood in the street had started to turn ugly. In my experience, when you get right down to it, there's no sorrier spectacle, nothing much worse or more dangerous than the human mob mentality. After all, armies are nothing more than mobs, really, even when they're organized to a greater or lesser degree. I'd been at Ypres, as you know, and there wasn't a hell of a lot you could tell me about military organization. So when I heard the muttered words on doorsteps, saw the little knots of people here and there, Jack Blackwell flitting from door to door like a political canvasser, I had to do something, and I could hardly count on any help from D.S. Longbottom. One thing I had learned, both as a soldier and as a school teacher, was that if you had a chance, your best bet was to take out the ringleader. That meant Jack Blackwell. Jack was the nasty type, and he and I had had more than one run-in over his son Nick's bullying and poor performance in class. In my opinion, young Nick was the sort of walking dead loss who should probably have been drowned at birth. A waste of skin, sinew, tissue and bone, and it wasn't hard to see where he got it from. Nick's older brother, Dave, was already doing a long stretch in the scrubs for beating a night watchman senseless during a robbery, and even the army couldn't find an excuse to spring him and enlist his service in killing Germans. Mrs. Blackwell had been seen more than once walking with difficulty, with bruises on her cheek. The sooner Jack Blackwell got his call-up papers, the better things would be all round. I intercepted Jack between the Deakins and the Kellys' houses, and it was clear from his gruff, "What do you want?" that he didn't want to talk to me. But I was adamant. "Morning, Jack," I greeted him. "Lovely day for a walk, isn't it?" "What's it to you?" "Just being polite. What are you up to, Jack? What's going on?" "None of your business." "Up to your old tricks? Spreading poison?" "I don't know what you're talking about." He made to walk away, but I grabbed his arm. He glared at me, but didn't do anything. Just as well at my age, and with my lungs, I'd hardly last 10 seconds in a fight. "Jack," I said, "don't you think you'd all be best off using your time to look for the poor lad?" "Look for him? That's a laugh. You know as well as I do where that young lad is." "Where? Where is he, Jack?" "You know." "No, I don't. Tell me." "He's dead and buried, that's what." "Where, Jack?" "I don't know the exact spot. If he's not in the canal, then he's buried somewhere not far away." "Maybe he is, but you don't know that. Not for certain. And even if you believe that, you don't know who put him there." Jack wrenched his arm out of my weakening grip and sneered. "I've got a damn sight better idea than you have, Frank Bascom, with all your book learning." Then he turned and marched off. Somehow, I got the feeling that I'd just made things worse. After my brief fracas with Jack Blackwell, I was at a loose end. I knew the police would still be looking for Johnny, asking questions, searching areas of waste ground, so there wasn't much I could do to help them. Feeling impotent, I went down to the canal, near Woodruff's scrapyard. Old Ezekiel Woodruff himself was poking around in the ruins of his business, so I decided to talk to him. I kept my distance, though, for even on a hot day such as this, Woodruff was wearing his greatcoat and black wool gloves with the fingers cut off, He wasn't known for his personal hygiene, so I made sure I didn't stand downwind of him. Not that there was much of a wind, but then it didn't take much. "Morning, Ezekiel," I said. "I understand young Johnny Critchley was down around here the day before yesterday."
"So they say,"
muttered Ezekiel. "See him, did you?"
"I weren't here."
"So you didn't see him?"
"Police have already been asking questions."
"And what did you tell them?" He pointed to the other side of the canal, the back of the housing estate.
"I were over there,"
he said.
"Sometimes people chuck out summat of value, even these days."
"But you did see Johnny?" He paused, then said,
"Aye."
"On this side of the canal?" Woodruff nodded. "What time was this?"
"I don't have a watch, but it weren't long after that daft bloke had gone by."
"Do you mean Colin Gormand?"
"Aye, that's the one."
So Johnny was still alone by the canal after Colin had passed by. D.S. Longbottom had probably known this, but he had beaten Colin anyway. One day I'd find a way to get even with him. The breeze shifted a little, and I got a whiff of stale sweat and worse. What was Johnny doing?
"Doing? Nowt special. We were just walking."
"Walking? Where?" Woodruff pointed.
"That way, towards the city centre."
"Alone?"
"Aye."
"And nobody approached him?"
"Nope. Not while I were watching."
I didn't think there was anything further to be got from Ezekiel Woodruff, so I bade him good morning. I can't say the suspicion didn't enter my head that he might have had something to do with Johnny's disappearance, though I'd have been hard-pushed to say exactly why or what. Odd though old Woodruff might be, there had never been any rumour or suspicion of his being overly interested in young boys, and I didn't want to jump to conclusions the way Jack Blackwell had. Still, I filed away my suspicions for later. A fighter droned overhead. I watched it dip and spin through the blue air and wished I could be up there. I'd always regretted not being a pilot in the war. A barge full of soldiers drifted by, and I moved aside on the towpath to let the horse that was pulling it pass by. For my troubles, I got a full blast of sweaty horseflesh and a pile of steaming manure at my feet. That had even Ezekiel Woodruff beat. Aimlessly, I followed the direction Ezekiel had told me Johnny had walked in, towards the city centre. As I walked, Jack Blackwell's scornful words about my inability to find Johnny echoed in my mind. Book learning. That was exactly the kind of cheap insult you would expect from a moron like Jack Blackwell, but it hurt nonetheless. No sense telling him I'd been buried in the mud under the bodies of my comrades for 2 days. No sense telling him about the young German soldier I'd surprised and bayoneted to death, twisting the blade until it snapped and broke off inside him. Jack Blackwell was too young to have seen action in the last war, but if there was any justice in the world, he'd damn well see it in this one. The canal ran by the back of the train station, where I crossed the narrow bridge and walked through the crowds of evacuees out front to City Square. Mary Critchley's anguish reverberated in my mind, too. "Mr. Bashcombe! Mr. Bashcombe!" I heard her call. Then, all of a sudden, as I looked at the black facade of the post office and the statue of the Black Prince in the centre of the city square, it hit me. I thought I knew what had happened to Johnny Critchley. But first, I had to go back to the street and ask just one important question.